William Petrach was a man who actually came to this institute, the Institute for European, Russian, and Eurasian Studies, in the mid-1990s. The reason that he came here was that he was a widower at the time, and he had no children, and was looking for a way to somehow secure his legacy. And this legacy was in improving the relations between Ukraine and the United States on an academic level. Mr. Petrach himself, he actually looked very carefully at what kind of institute it is that he wanted to leave his legacy with. And so he came to many of our events. And you have to imagine he was a man in his late 70s, stocky, very friendly, very open-minded. He came to not just academic events, but also social events. And he was always a very welcome guest here. So I just want to say a few things about Mr. Petrach's life, because this life was so unusual. So he was born Vasil, this was his Ukrainian name, in 1918. He was born in a place named Dobrotvir in the Lviv region, so it is in western Ukraine. And he always remained loyal to this region, and when the Soviet Union disappeared, he actually traveled there, and for him it was also very important to strengthen the ties, not just between Ukraine as such and the United States as such, but also the ties with Lviv and with the University of Lviv, where he actually had studied. And as a young man, he actually became a lieutenant in the Polish army in 1939. He was captured by the Germans, by the German Nazis, then escaped to what is now Soviet territory, was drafted into the Red Army as a captain of the artillery, arrested by the NKVD, by the predecessor to the KGB, so Secret Service, after denunciation. Then he spent 2 years in the Gulag. He was sent back to the front as a commander of a penal unit. He was wounded in World War II and captured by the Germans again. Then he escaped from the Germans again and joined the Czechoslovak army. And after the end of the war, he made it to Canada in the late 1940s, then later to the United States. And in Canada, he met his wife, Olena, in English, Helen. They lived together for several happy decades, but she passed away before him in 1984. And so afterwards, he, as I said, was looking for a purpose with his, his money, his wealth, and he wanted it to be to serve an actual, good cause. And this good cause for him was actually strengthening the ties with Ukraine. I have to say then about his personality, he was a very calm man, and when you showed an interest in his reactions, in his views, also in his life, he began to talk, and he always carried with him some photographs, one of his wife, then others from his life. He would show these photos to you and talked about, stories of his life in a very touching manner. It was impossible really to not be interested and not be intrigued by these stories. Always he had a very mild smile on his face, and so obviously from his trials and tribulations that he went through in his long life, he concluded something that was very humane and very friendly about human beings and what they're capable of. So this is really important for me to emphasize here. Mr. Petrach, he passed away in 1998. It was an accident that happened to him, unfortunately, in his house. And then so suddenly we were confronted with the task to actually find good purposes, a good use for the money that he left us. And so we organized conferences. Our then director, Jim Goldgeier, was the first to actually find very efficient purposes for these funds. Conferences on Ukraine, for example, on Ukraine's agriculture, which of course is an interesting subject for many companies throughout the world because of Ukraine's very fertile soil. Then we had a guest lecturer, a Ukrainian British guest lecturer here whose salary was paid from these funds. Then we had guest lecturers and visiting scholars from Lviv, from the university that was Mr. Petrach's, or had been Mr. Petrach's alma mater. And so every year, one or two of these scholars came here and worked on some project and also gave talks and participated in the life of the Institute. So every year there was increasing interest in Ukrainian subjects, political, economic, cultural, and so on. And we also established good connections with the Ukrainian embassy. And we had the Ukrainian ambassador as our guest speaker here several times in large events. So every year we tried to do whatever possible, something that was interesting to our members and to members of the community here, the George Washington University and the Institute community and the Elliott School, that made Ukraine really showed what an interesting subject that was. His life reflected really the very difficult destiny of Ukraine, his homeland that he loved so dearly. And it is not just because of this question of the monetary legacy, but also of the spirit of his life. So in a way, we honored him and keep honoring him as a man whose life actually speaks about the resilience of Ukraine and the great values that this nation has produced. And so calling this Petrach Program actually is a reminder of not just this one person, but also his generation and the spirit in which he actually lived and worked and left his legacy with the request, with the purpose of actually thinking and keeping thinking about Ukraine and the destiny of Ukraine and Ukrainian-American relations. So that's what I want to say about Mr. Petrach.